How many of you have made a quilt that you really like? I mean, these were leftover pieces that I put together into this great star pattern. It's a comfort quilt. I really love it. I've looked at it 1,000 times. I've pieced it. I've ironed it. I've quilted it. I've even put the binding on it. And it's not until the very last second that you look down and realize it's upside down. Usually this is after, you've sent it to the quilter and paid to have it done. Nobody notices it because they're looking at the whole big picture. It's not until you see something like that that you say, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? The answer is not applique a square over it. No, I'm going to show you how to fix it. Step 1 is to get out your seam ripper and take out all the quilting in the area that's affected. Now in my case it's just here. I've taken out most of this. I need to take out the rest of this quilting right in here so that I can get started on taking this section, this flying geese section here, out. Okay, that didn't take long, and I've got my seam ripper. I'm going to reach in very carefully, any part on the seam, and click one thread. Okay, so you can see once I've made that initial cut of one thread, I can go back in with the rounded part of my seam ripper, the side with the ball on it, and I can just do 1 or 2 at a time. You can hear them cut. I'm not cutting the fabric, just the threads. And I can go in here. There I go. So I've got a little past that, just past here. I'll do the same on this side. Get a little bit from each side. And I'm going to work my way. So here I have one piece. One side of this is out. It's opened. Here's my batting. And I'm going to work my way around to take out this one section. Don't worry about the little side pieces that will be loose. We're going to catch those back later. I'm going to show you how to sew it in invisibly using a special stitch. Okay? Here we are again. Here's my piece. I pressed it flat, all the seam allowances flat. Doesn't that look better in that position? Okay, so to sew this back in, I have seam allowances on the 3 sides. The 3 dark sides are actually folded under. I don't have access to them to sew them. This one, however, is open. It's a little extended, a little beyond each side, and I'm going to line up my piece. This is where it goes. Double check I'm not sewing back in the wrong direction. Line up the points. Pin that section. Line up my stitch line with where the stitch line would be on either side. When I start sewing, I'm not going to sew into the seam allowance because I'll need to flip that seam allowance in different directions maybe. So I've got yellow thread. I'm starting in here at that 1/4 inch line, so I'm only sewing through these 2 pieces. Okay, let's get that pin out of there. You can use a straight stitch. Just follow the little holes from the stitch line from before. Or you can use a back stitch if you want. But this straight stitch is going to be fine. I'll call you back when I am ready for the rest. Okay, here we are back. I've stitched this seam here, and I tucked the edges underneath to line them up the way they're supposed to be. Remember, these blue pieces around the edges had the seam allowances folded under. So I took my little tool and I tucked my patchwork piece in so that the stitch lines would line up all here, even on the sides. And then I took some of my Roxanne's glue. This is the best stuff. Tiny, tiny little beads this gives you. And I just run this underneath here. I don't need to have a continuous line, just a little bit. Same over here. Run it under just a little at the sides. Any place that is open, Does not need to be a continuous line. And when you've got it right position, take your iron and just hold the iron on it for a few seconds. This dries the glue out, so you don't have to wait. Although it does dry very, very fast, you're going to need to make sure you've got the cap back on it within a few seconds. Okay, so I will be stitching this down with the ladder stitch, but you're not going to be able to see it. Okay, here's a quick demo on how this works, this stitch. This is my fabric that's folded under, the yellow. I folded that under. This is my other piece of fabric. I ran a little bit of Roxanne's glue down there, and my stitch is going to come up here in the fold, tucked in the fold. I'm going to run along the fold on the inside, cross over to the other side, come up, cross over, straight line, and each time when I run the fabric through run my thread through the yellow fabric, I'm running the needle directly underneath the fold. Pop it out, go straight over to the other side. Of course, this is all, your stitches aren't really that big. You're going to run the needle over, come over, and drop it down directly next to the fold, carry under, over to the other side, run it under the fold, carry under the other side. So here's our ladder effect, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. See? Just like that. I think you can see that well enough. Okay, so I did that with 2 pieces of muslin that I'm hoping you can see the stitch here. See these big honking black stitches? This is 12 weight thread. Now watch when I pull the thread. See it all just pretty much, that's not bad. Well, considering I'm using a shish kebab skewer of a needle, that's pretty much invisible. Now I can pick this up. It's a little warm. I can pick this up and I can fold it back. So I can do my ladder stitch, because on the ladder stitch, I'll need to run my needle in the fold of the fabric, not under. I need to go in. That needle will go right inside that fold, over to the opposite side, carry under on my flying goose side, and then back directly in through the fold, and so it's moving along underneath and then over a millimeter and then back the other way. Okay, so we'll come back when that's finished. So here we are. This repair is complete. It has taken, in fact, sewing time maybe 20 minutes. It's completely closed. All these seams are completely closed with the ladder stitch. It looks perfect. You cannot see anything. And now when I go back and redo the quilting, I'll be quilting back over these lines. So they'll end up being reinforced in case you're not sure of your hand quilting or your hand stitching. But don't forget, this will all be stitched down again with my quilting. Easy. It looks perfect. No one would ever know the difference. And it really, if you do it, here I used yellow thread here, but here I used blue thread, and it's still absolutely invisible on the side. Okay? Way to fix the problem. Okay, thanks.